So,
I'm ready.
yeah. So how about you introduce yourself, say a little bit about your book, and we start with that.
Okay. So my name is Glenda Toews or Taves, however you decide you want to say it. I am a waitress at a pub in Chilliwack, British Columbia. I've been working there for over 15 years. And I had the weirdest experience with a customer over the pandemic. He was a rich man from the Cayman Islands, and he sat down in the pub and noticed our homeless issue in Chilliwack. And he was like, "What would you do about it, Glenda?" And I'm like, "Well, I had lots of ideas and just not dealing with the homeless we had now, but better to prevent it." It seemed right to me that if you could prevent homelessness to begin with, then you wouldn't have homeless adults, right? So where would we go to look for that? And I had a group of teachers that used to come into the pub. While they didn't share a lot of stuff that went on, they all looked tired over the years. They just seemed to be more and more tired. And I'd be like, "What's up, guys?" And they're like, "Too many problems, not enough adults to solve them." And so I knew they were seeing stuff we were not seeing as a community. So I had mentioned this to Daryl, the rich guy. I said, "I think that if I was investing a bunch of money, I would just invest into our youth because it's just logical that if they are housed and fed and healthy, that they would continue to be housed and fed and happy adults." Well, it was like it was an epiphany to him, right? And he's like, "Oh my goodness, that's amazing. Is this something you want to work on? Is this something you would like to do?" And I'm like, "Heck yeah, that would be fantastic." So before I know it, boom, 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 we were investing in a foundation that was called the Foundation of Hope. And so we were setting up a foundation that initially was only going to be sort of interests were working with Chilliwack youth with the idea that we could prevent homelessness if we threw our time and energy into that. And then later, as the year or two went on, we were looking to expand it globally. After 2 years, it didn't end like I thought it would. I was left with a fantastic story that needed to be told. So I wrote a book.
What would you do if you didn't write a book about this experience?
I think that because the whole thing has so many interesting stories in it, they probably would have driven me crazy. And I needed to get those stories out because the whole thing was quite traumatic for us. The mind has a way of rolling it over and over and over. Well, in my mind, anyways, I roll things over and over and over until they almost drive me insane. So it was a really good way for me to unravel the whole situation slowly. And I don't know if I could have unraveled that in a different way. But I also didn't know I was a writer, which is interesting because I mean, I never had written a book before.
So you didn't do any sort of writing before writing this book.
I would write for sure. I mean, I always enjoyed sort of expressing myself through writing, but I didn't do anything with it. Like I never wrote a short story. When I was a kid, I would write poems. I guess I kept it for letters. Yeah, that was my writing.
Okay. What genre would you say your book really is?
So the genre is memoir because it is a memoir of what happened. And a memoir basically it takes usually a segment of somebody's life or a period of their life and explains it that way. So it's a memoir. It's not a memoir written in a traditional arc. So you have a traditional arc, which is probably most of the books one reads, they take a situation from point A to point B. Mine is written in a braided mosaic. A mosaic is fragments. So there's fragmented stories and that it all braids together in the end. So it's a different structure style. I really liked it because for me, writing it, if I wrote it all in one long sequence, it felt very boring and dull because I had sort of started that way. And I'm like, this is, if I'm bored writing it, people are going to be bored reading it. And so then I was like, what can I do? And so then I think I got the idea off of a TV show, This Is Us, because I quite liked that TV show. I was kind of sad it ended, but they always jumped back into time. And I'm like, well, if TV can do it, then for sure a book can be. And I didn't know that books actually did that. But for me, I got the idea from a TV show. Like, why don't I just jump back in time?
Why'd you choose the specific stories from Daryl? Like, such as, the stories in the beginning.
Those were the stories he used on me. All of those stories that you hear or read in that were a recreation of the stories he would tell me. He was a fantastic storyteller. And in doing that, he would also let you know that you are trustworthy enough for him to share those stories with. And so you felt quite special because he wouldn't tell just everybody these stories. He would make you feel special enough that you were worthy to hear inside his life. And the stories were pretty spectacular. I mean, they made my jaw go, oh, right? You have to understand, I work at the pub. Most of the time, people are talking about the weather or their joints. Yeah. So he came along and he started sharing these stories. I was like, holy cannoli, this guy's interesting. The reason I shared them was because I figured he probably had told them often and would continue to tell them often. And so the book had a purpose, and that was to help the Canadian people, that if they ever bumped into him and they heard those stories, they would know what they were walking into.
Do you think he made you trust him really quickly so that you would jump the gun in investments and not really think twice?
I think he is a con man. And I think I have learned later, because now you want to know how things happened and why it happened. I think he's highly skilled at reading a mark. So a mark in a conman's life is a person who takes the least amount of energy to maneuver into what they want. So he saw that I was a kind human being, and because I was kind and I wanted to help people, I was like a super easy mark for him. So he, of course, deliberately did everything. There was no part of him that wasn't strategizing. He knew from the minute that I'd opened my mouth and shared anything about myself with him that what he was going to do. I believe that 100%.
Was there any sort of thing in the beginning that made you feel like he was untrustworthy at all?
I think the logical part of me absolutely Googled con man, because I am a waitress in a pub. Here is this guy telling me he's rich. While his stories were fantastic, it did feel too good to be true. And so I was like, okay. And even I think in the book, I had addressed it with my colleague, Tina, after I'd given him the first bit of money, that, when he came back, I was like, oh, good, you didn't take off with the money. You came back. So, I mean, I did have those thoughts, because I'm like, you're telling me you're a rich man, but you're in a pub. Like, come on. Like, you just expect me to believe that? I was listening very carefully. And I think that I was listening very carefully because I was listening to see if he would screw up. The reason I got his stories so correct in the book were because I was listening to see if he was screwing up. Daryl didn't dress in nice clothes, and he made it believable, because if you're like super duper wealthy, you're not going to want to flash that, because you don't want people to know you've got that kind of money. So he actually made it more believable because he was so understated, is the way he dressed, everything. He didn't bring attention to himself. He wasn't flashy. He was the exact opposite of what Google was telling me a con man was.
Did he ever show proof of like the helicopters he would take to like Seattle?
He would show me pictures on his phone, but the pictures on his phone always looked suspiciously like they were from Pinterest or something like that. So, and even his fiancée, Tina Hoffmeister, would share some pictures, and I would check on photos when people send them where they came from. And they always came from somewhere online. They were never like from a phone or anything. So I did know that. But again, I'm just a waitress from Chilliwack. He's like this big, rich casino mogul. How much information would I be if the tables were turned? If I was the super wealthy person talking to this person that I don't really know, am I going to share real pictures or real information with them? Because they might be a crazy person. And do I really want them in my life? So I kind of felt like it was holding me off, because I'm not going to share my real life with you. He made it quite clear that he didn't share anything and had stuff scrubbed off the internet all the time. Again, it just to me seemed very logical that he wouldn't share real things, because you don't really want people in your life to know that deeply about you. But also you have to remember it was during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So we didn't have the ability to travel, or he was always jetting off here and there. And we do have helicopters. He would tell me, oh, it was the red one or the blue one that are always flying around Chilliwack. So, I mean, you're like, yeah, I see the red one. Yeah, I see the blue one. So, I mean, but the thing is, he also was in Chilliwack paying attention to the color of the helicopters.
Did Daryl also show you pictures of Tina, or did Tina ever send you pictures of herself?
So Tina Hoffmeister, because there's two Tinas in there, so I'll
Right,
always
yeah.
call Daryl's fiance, Tina Hoffmeister. Tina, the good Tina, is my colleague at work. So, anyways, Tina Hoffmeister did share a couple of photos with me early on, but again, I did the right click thing.
Yeah.
And I knew from Daryl that she'd had quite a traumatic upbringing and a traumatic experiences with boyfriends. And so when I did was it the right click or the left thing to find out where the photos came from and saw they were online, I again thought the exact thing. Like, she doesn't know me. I'm a name and an email. Why would she share something? Like, she sent a picture of her house, which wasn't her house, and of her, which wasn't her. And Daryl also would send me or show me pictures on his phone of her. I later found them on Shutterstock. So, yeah, they were on Shutterstock. Tina Hoffmeister is really a Russian model named Olinka or something like that.
How did your daughters react to this whole thing being a complete lie?
I think they've both handled it very well. I don't think that either of them have read the book because both of them, it brings up the memories because he drew them in deeply. It wasn't just me. They both have pivoted and moved on because they're really good at doing that. I don't think that either of them were like overly shocked. I think all of us, even probably Taylor and I more so, and Taylor and Rafi, her husband Rafi, are more so intrigued with a personality that can do that. The three of us are more there. Danielle was pretty much ready to go and move on to something else already. I don't think that they lost terribly much sleep over it, but imagine getting your hopes all built up for fantastic jobs.
Yeah.
And then going, ha ha, it's a joke. It's
And
a
also,
lie.
like, getting money to help with your mission of helping other people. That,
Exactly.
how you were working with Chilliwack Secondary to get all those
Yeah.
laptops.
Yeah, that was so being conned or a victim of a con, you go through like a gamut of emotions. And one of them, the first thing was the utter humiliation of having to go to the school who we'd had meetings with already and tell them it was all a lie and that everything we were hoping to help with was not going to happen and that I'd been suckered in, that we'd been suckered. Like, it makes me even now want to throw up because when you're bringing that kind of hope to somebody, it's like super sad. One, that we couldn't do that, but two, that you have to admit that you got suckered in. It's a terrible feeling.
Was
Yeah.
Haley as sucked into everything as you were?
At the beginning, yes, because we hung out together and we watched football together. And but when things didn't start unfolding, he was less likely to want to come out on Beer Friday because felt he was going to say snarky things and things like that. And at the end, he wanted to pull out completely. I said, well, you can't. We've promised all this hope to the school and to Danielle and Taylor. And just because things are not working out the way we're expecting it, you can't all of a sudden change your mind. The delays, the pressure of all of those delays, like, it's the back and forth of that. I wouldn't want to relive that part. Like, I can live with the after effects of Daryl, but I'd rather live in that after effects of him than live inside that swinging. It's coming, it's not, it's coming, it's not, it's coming, it's not, because you can't plan. Everything's put on hold because you're just waiting. And literally, we were waiting for nothing.
Would you say it's like that with the house that you're building right now? You're kind of waiting in limbo.
We are in limbo because we always seem to be in limbo, but it's every time we move forward, something all of a sudden happens and stops us. So it's not like we have just been doing nothing. We pivot.
Why do you mention property and building a house so much in the beginning before Daryl came in?
Because that was sort of the catalyst of our lives. Like, it wasn't just our story with Daryl, but it was our story here. It was our story of stepping out and doing something completely difficult because I'm, like I said, I'm kind of like a rule follower. I like life in a certain thrum. I had been reading the Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, and he's like, do hard things because then you experience amazing things. Well, I did experience amazing things. I wouldn't say they were easy and super great, but, definitely we stepped into doing difficult. And I think maybe perhaps in my mind, I was thinking once you overcome difficult, it will be beautiful.
Would you say you still follow those 12 rules that Jordan Peterson wrote?
Mhm. I would say I haven't read the book in 6 years. I would have to go back and reread it to refresh my memory. But the one thing I liked about them were they just seemed logical because it is true. If you don't go and try something hard, you're not going to be pushed beyond what you can. But it's not just in the words that Jordan Peterson would share in the 12 Rules for Life, but those were sort of echoing another book I had read called How to Read a Book by Mortimer Adler. And in that, Mortimer Adler was telling me to read difficult things that are above my knowledge, above my understanding, because if I only read what I understood, I would never learn more. Jordan Peterson sort of echoed that idea. If you don't push yourself, it's kind of like a rubber band. Like if you're not pulling it, it's only going to stay this big. So to me, it just made sense, right? So it's like, okay, let's try it and see what happens. I mean, the worst that can happen is we can die, right? But we're all going to die anyway, so you may as well try something in the meantime. So I think it was kind of that. But I honestly, if you ask me what the other 11 rules are, I would have to go back and reread it to let you know whether I still think that way or not.
Would you say writing your book was a difficult thing to do?
No, writing it was easy, completely easy. Publishing it was hard, and marketing it is also hard, hard, hard. Writing it was easy, and it was easy because everything was still fresh in my mind, and I was unraveling everything as I was writing it out. I didn't realize how much I enjoyed writing until I wrote that book. And so completely fulfilling at the end of it when I finished the last word. I was like, oh my goodness, I wrote a book. I didn't think I would actually finish it. Like I started it with an idea that it would be great to have like this book on every bar stool, wherever Daryl would be. I mean, that was sort of my idea, but I sometimes have great ideas and no follow through.
How do you think Daryl has been prosecuted or caught before? If your story didn't do anything, how did he get caught before?
Well, he ripped off 32 cops in the Ponzi scheme. Yeah, so they did put him in jail for 7 years for that. I mean, that was the news article that was shared with me at the end of my book. And after he was out on parole, while he was on parole, he ripped off another 42 people in Elbow Creek casino deal where I believe he was telling people he owned it and needed investors for it. So then he served, I believe it was another 4 or 5 years for that. So then the prison spewed him out. And basically, I think it was only a couple of years later, he was sitting in Chilliwack.
Have you personally heard from Daryl since you made the book?
We did text back and forth after I found out he was a con man. And I think I also needed that because I needed some small details in my book, like what kind of car he had. And he's like, oh, yeah, it was a Nova. So, I mean, we did text back and forth. I'm like, oh, that's handy to have him at my fingertips. Now, the thing is, when we were still friends, his ex had cut off his telephone. And so I had opened a phone under my name for him that we were going to transfer into the Foundation of Hope once that was up and running. He had said something that, one day I would just end up cutting it off like her. I said, oh, no, I promise I won't just cut it off. I would definitely let you know. And I'm sort of a person of my word. So here's this guy who's ripped me off at about 70 grand and I'm paying his phone bill. So I did say to him, you're going to have to start paying your own phone bill because I'm going to cut it off if you don't pay it. So all of a sudden he figured out how to e-transfer money. So he was paying that telephone bill. I went to Germany August 2023. While I was in Germany in August, I went into that phone bill and I found out how to get into the phone history. I found his new girlfriend's phone number. I found the taxi cab that he was driving and I found where he was staying at. So when I came home, I mailed some books to the taxi cab company and to the place that he was staying at. I did contact the girlfriend because I'm like, oh, she should know. But she didn't seem to want to hear about it. Heard he has ripped her off for about $400,000.
Wow.
Yeah, so she had sold a house and invested it with him. And he was the love of her life. I don't know if they're still together now. They were getting married in Belize. Paul McCartney was going to be singing on the beach at their wedding. I sent screenshots of text like Tina Hoffmeister. She's like, Tina Hoffmeister is Daryl's personal assistant, not his fiance. She just didn't want, and I understand because if she really did believe that he's the love of her life at 61 years old or 60 years old, and she's invested her whole life money with him, she would have to face that. And you have to be in a certain mind space in order to deal with the outcome of that.
Did you expect people to have that reaction to
No,
you?
I guess the atrocity of what Daryl did to me felt so big that possibly no other person in the world could be like Daryl. But as I'm finding out, there's a lot of people out there that have no problem ripping people off. I'm shocked that they came forward because I didn't realize it was such a problem. Like, the online scams and all those kinds of things. Yeah.
Hmm.
But to have friends take advantage of you, I had never, I guess, experienced that to that extent. I'm like, oh, so Daryl's not the unique one in the world.
Would you say Google's definition of a con person is
Needs help.
accurate to?
No, it's not accurate. No, not at all. I think they would need to revisit it and look at a con artist as not being flashy. Daryl was completely not the description of a con artist. I don't know where my book is. Oh, I have it on one of my ebooks. It's by Maria Konnikova, I think it is. It's called Master of the Con. Her description of con would work way better on a Google description of con artistry.
Oh yeah, so you are writing a second book, right?
Yes.
Can you share anything about that?
So now, spinning on a bar stool is how it's the stories of everything of how we got conned, our lives in it, even customers' lives during that time, what was going on. After I finished writing it, people were reaching out going, did you build your house yet? Like, did Daryl go to prison? Like, what? They had all these questions. And I really honestly thought I had written Spinning on a Bar Stool. I was done writing. I didn't even consider writing anymore, but I did have the editor edited Spinning on a Bar Stool had said to me in an email, she says, please don't stop writing. And I was like, oh, well, she also told me my story. I was a brilliant storyteller. When people were asking, I was like, oh, I could probably follow up because people liked the pub story people, like the stories of the people in the pub. People wanted to know what had happened. So I started writing last October. And then about 4 months ago, people from Daryl's past started reaching out to me. And that's basically from my presence on social media. They're like, so both Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, I've had women, ex-girlfriends, a childhood friend, a colleague, a work colleague, and have all taken their time out of their lives just to tell me their experiences. And so now I'm restructuring the book, like the whole book pivoted then. Because it sort of hit the mark of what I wanted to know right after everything had happened was what type of a personality does this? Did he have like a messed up childhood? Like, what was his childhood like? Was he born this way or was he made this way? So, all of that, they were being answered. And I'm like, I wanted to know that. Perhaps other people also would like to know that. So the book is probably 3/4 of the way into completion. It's mosaic braid, so it's little stories that are bumping in and out, but we're doing a circa Daryl. Like I understood I had some difficulties with spinning on a bar stool, and when Daryl, we did put his voice in bold, like his stories in bold print, but a lot of people don't know that right away. And so it was confusing for them. So the style really sort of confused them. So this time I know better. And so we are doing sort of his segments of his history, and I'm calling them circa Daryl. So whether it's 1970 or 1980 or 1990 or whatever, so that the reader will know where they are in his life.
How would you say your books would be like if you didn't have an editor?
Bad. So I actually, even with this book now, like the editor for Spinning on a Bar Stool did really well, but there is still a lot of things that were too bumpy and that should have been taken care of that weren't, to the point where I almost wouldn't go back and mind revising the whole thing. One of them was the jumping of voices between our stories and Daryl's stories at the beginning so that I could orient the reader better. I did bring that up with the editor. The editor was like, oh, no, it doesn't really seem, once you read the whole book, it's fine. But if people don't read the whole book and they put it down because they don't get it, that was a huge thing. This next go round, besides an editor, like right now, I actually found a writing critique group. So I'm giving them sections of spun off a bar stool and getting their feedback so that I can adjust it from that. And then I'll have beta readers, which are people who read it before it goes out even to the editor. So yeah, editing is necessary. It's just necessary. Yeah. And having even like the critique, the people critiquing the work, absolutely necessary too. I wish I had that with Spinning on a Bar Stool, but I didn't even know it existed. So, I mean, really with Spinning on a Bar Stool, I did the best that I could with the ability and my knowledge that I had at the time. And would I do it differently today? Yep.
Did you ever share, I guess, like prototypes of your book to people close to you before you released it?
Yes, absolutely. Both with Spinning on a Bar Stool and both with Spun Off a Bar Stool. A select few got Spinning on a Bar Stool, like your grandma did, my mom, because she didn't know the story or anything in the story. So it was kind of fun to send it to her, to listen to her. Like, she did it. She was getting the chapters. I'd send her chapters. She'd be like, oh, you don't need to put me in the list of money people. Oh, I'm fine, blah, blah, blah. The one at the counselor at school who became my friend, Tina, the real Tina, my colleague. And this time I have 4 different people who are getting chapters as I go along. I think last time I had about 6, and this time now I have 4. So, and if they catch spelling errors, that's fine, but that's not their job. Their job is just to read it. It's probably more important for me to have the critique group read through it, because the critique group doesn't know me. They don't know the story. They've not read Spinning on a Bar Stool. And I want to write Spun Off a Bar Stool where it can stand on its own legs. That a person doesn't need to read Spinning on a Bar Stool in order to understand Spun Off a Bar Stool. So you can just pick it up and it would be a good read on its own. So these people will help me do that because they don't have any backstory. You know, I said, if you don't know who Taylor is, let me know. I need to put that in.
Are there stories that you were originally going to put in Spinning on a Bar Stool but didn't for whatever reason?
I think both the same with Spinning on a Bar Stool and with Spun Off a Bar Stool, that I create vignettes of stories. But if they're not moving the story along, I take it out. Like there's some, like actually there was one that I did leave in Spinning on a Bar Stool, and I had a friend of mine afterwards say why that story, because it really didn't move the thing on. And I said, because too many people were dying and I needed some humor. And that was, yeah, truly, it's like, right. So
yeah,
it was
story you're talking about.
The queen, like the pickled eggs, pickled egg farts, which was Patrick's story. And I'm like, it's a funny story. It really has nothing to do with anything. But I was like, to me, everything felt sort of depressing that I needed to lighten it up. So the pickled egg farts story stayed. I was like, I don't care. It's going to stay in there. My book. I can do what I want. So.
Yeah, I remember reading some chapters and wondering why it was in the story. The chapter We Have Noodles, I was wondering why that was in the book, because I don't really feel like it was really relevant to anything at all. More just a story that you wanted to tell of
childhood. I think with Noodles, I think also I was sort of dipping into my own history, things in my past, and in my daughter's past, because there was even stories with them. Danielle's story was Fireball, the shooting of Fireball, and the depressing one, getting sucked into depression after her dad died. And Taylor's was the MDMA story. So these are my daughters, though. Again, that was another difficulty I had, orienting the reader right away. I like to read stories where I like to figure things out and at the end go, oh, but I've since learned that most people don't like that. So I was like, oh, you don't like to just have that information waiting and then go, aha, at the end. Okay, apparently not. So I would change though. I would do that differently now, but I really enjoyed writing those then. And Noodles too, I think it also was trying to express sort of a little bit of where we came from and how we could even be grateful as we're sitting in a trailer. Like I said, not everything turns out, but it doesn't necessarily make your situation worse. Like we're still living in a trailer, but I don't hate it. I don't go, oh man, I wish I was back in my house. And I've lived through way worse times, like noodles, right? And I always think with stories like that, I, in my own life, use it as a measuring stick, that when other bad things happen in my life, it's like, okay, but I still have food. I'm not just eating noodles, or, I have at least noodles. Even when I was only eating noodles, it was like, well, at least I have noodles. But now it's like, oh, well, whatever. At least I'm not having to just eat noodles.
I was also wondering, why do you write yourself in the third person in those short stories, like I have noodles, or Haney in the third person when it was that story during Christmas?
I think it was just sort of a style that I wanted because for the person to be reading it, not knowing exactly who they're reading about. And at the end, because you'll always find at the end, there's something that goes, oh, I was playing with hanging on the Christmas ornament, so that it brings the person back to go, oh, that was Haney. Haney lived through that. Oh, and so it gives them for me, it feels richer instead of just saying, Haney did this and this and this and this and this and this happened to Haney.
There are some parts in the book that I feel like I would have only gotten because I know you and I know like some of the characters in the book. Like, for example, I have noodles. I was only able to understand that because I know you. But if I gave the book to like a friend of mine, they wouldn't be able to understand it as much as I do.
Right. And also I think it's not just because you know me also, but you're still a young reader. You haven't had enough years to read, and it's got nothing to do with your ability to read, but the years spent reading. When you are an active reader your entire life, it's like the editor who has been reading all the time. She's like, oh, you're a brilliant storyteller. Not, oh, I'm confused. That's the difference, because she has read and that's her life and blah, blah, blah. So she reads differently and she understands nuances differently because she's been exposed to more. And as you read more in your life and different genres and different styles, you would probably pick up on those things easier than what you did. And that's probably also why I wrote it that way, thinking everyone would get it, because I do read that way. I'm an avid reader. And so I like to sort of puzzle things out. And so for me, it was like, oh, just let them puzzle it out. It's fun. Well, apparently not. So I had to consider how people read, and I didn't. And I actually, even in one of my critique group, one of the ladies in it said that I needed to rewrite everything and put it into a traditional arc, because she thought that was the only style out there. So then I had a conversation with her afterwards. I said, no, there's many. I said, it isn't a style. It's just not in your traditional arc style. It's in a mosaic braid. And she's like, what? And I said, Google it. I'm not yanking your chain. Go ahead, Google it. It's a style. So, and it's mostly used in literary nonfiction, right? And memoir building, that kind of thing. It's completely, it's fragmented stories put together. So
how do you feel that you've won those awards?
I think it's particularly striking to me because I didn't make it through grade 10. And if you understood what your grandma and I lived in as children and how we were made to feel very stupid growing up. And we know we're not stupid. Like, we know we're not. But it's like a sticker that says, you were right. You knew you weren't stupid, even though you were told you were stupid. And even though you didn't finish school, your story resonated enough for it to win an award. So I think it made me feel really good that way. I didn't realize how much it would do for the book as much as it's done. For some reason, it's quite interesting that when someone gives you an award, all of a sudden people go, okay, then the book's worth reading.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's shallow.
That was interesting. I sold out way more books since the award than before it. The intention of the book has always been the same, to help people. The fact that it won an award is now letting more people, if you say you're an award-winning author, the book is an award-winning thing, they take a chance on it. And if it's interesting. It sort of all of a sudden brings a credibility for people to read. I didn't know that would happen. So that's interesting, that we as humans need something to have a sticker that says it's worthy in order for them to pick it up.
Have you gained back the money that you've lost from?
No. So not only have I not gained back the money, the book I put out with the help of Tellwell, which is sort of like a vanity press, because I wanted it out fast and quick, and I didn't know how to do that on my own, and I didn't want to give it to a traditional publisher because I didn't want the names changed. And they would have for sure changed Daryl's name. I had my reasons why I chose to use the vanity publisher like Tellwell, and it cost $10,000 to put the book out. Then I would say that was probably about another $5,000 worth of initial advertising, printing costs. And while I sold probably about $6,000 in books so far, I've now put $4,000 back into the audiobook. It's an ongoing, expensive procedure. But for me, it was worth it because, again, I'm trying to help people. While I really want people to buy my book so I can recoup some funds that we lost, it hasn't even paid for itself yet.
Do you think your presence on social media is really helping push the sales of your book?
On TikTok, yes. On Facebook, Instagram, no. TikTok, I think, has maybe a different algorithm than Facebook. Sure. The community in TikTok respond differently. Like I did Facebook and Instagram ads for over a year, and I've seen nothing compared to the response on TikTok. So if you're a writer and you're selling a book, I would recommend you get on TikTok. And your grandma told me to get on TikTok like a year before I went on TikTok. I'm like, I can't learn another social media because, we're old. It's like, I'm already doing this and this. And I was taking care of a full website at that time. And I was like, I hate taking care of the website. So then we just changed it to a landing page, which is great because it works for me. So, but when I went on TikTok, that was an eye opener on how I guess the algorithm works. I had a couple of videos that went viral. Still don't know why, but it's completely helped the book get out there. And then also not just the book get out there, but people.
I'm really happy that you've made this book and you're spreading the conversation out to people who really need to see it. If I publish this online and strangers end up seeing this, what would you say?
I would say that in my being a victim of a con, the police would do nothing about it. And I was writing my story to help people. The editing process, the publishing process, the printing process were all threatening not to publish it because I was not going to change Daryl's name. So I had to take the chance that none of that was going to get done because I didn't want to change his name. So it was terrifying. You're terrified. You're terrified, one, that you get conned. You're mad because there's no justice. He's out there doing it to other people. You're trying to help people and society is telling you can't tell the truth. I have a problem with that. My things that I'm saying now, if you've been a victim of something and your perpetrator's not going to come after you with a hatchet and kill you, then use your voice because it's all we have. And don't let people silence what has happened in fear, because that's what I thought, what felt like was happening with the book. It's like I could not tell the story with the real names and the real things of what happened, because that's not how we work. They were threatening that I could be sued for defamation and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, fine. I would love to see Daryl stand in front of a judge explaining himself.
Would you have any words to inspiring authors?
Anyone who wants to write or art or dance or whatever, do whatever. All I would suggest is just do it. Even if you don't know the rules, just do it. You can share it with people if you want, or don't share it with people if you don't want to. Also, I would say do it, and do it to get whatever is inside out of you, because that's where it's coming from. It's all coming from our minds, but also do it as not in a rush. And be okay with learning as you go, and be okay with throwing out everything if it's not working, and just holding on to it loosely. Like if you spent 3 weeks on something and it's not working, be okay with letting it go and moving on to something else.
Thank you so much for letting me do this interview with you.
Oh, yeah, anytime. I'm looking forward to another one when you're in university and we're talking spun off the bar stool.
I hope I get to do that. I don't know.
That
Depends
would be
if I
fun.
do an English course.
Well, if you do, you do. If you don't, you don't. Right?
Yeah.
You don't need an English course to write a book, apparently.